All right, Shabbosai. Good evening. Good evening. Let's begin. So we are picking up tonight on Chof Ham Beis 25b, and I believe we left off. So Bashoshes take all right. Akum Arum we did good. V'lo yiskasu lo b'mayim haroyim v'lo b'mei mishra. Right. It's like smack in the middle of the page. I don't know. Too many lines to count. So right, literally right in the middle of the page. So. So remember again, the topic of the Mishnah was a person saying Shema, or they need to say Shema, and they're unclothed, but there's a body of water. So there's the ability to go ahead and literally cover oneself in the water, and the water kind of obscures the erva. So now the Mishnah was talking about a situation where what happens if it's flax water, right, or it's other kinds of dirty water. So the halacha is you have to pour clean water into it in order to be able to use it to cover your body for Kriyat Shema purposes. V'kama maya rami ba'azil. So the Gemara says, V'kama maya rami ba'azil. So I was like, how much clean water do you have to pour in there in order to make it usable? Allah, this is what it means to say, really a person should not cover their body with putrid water or with flax water. I will say flax water is, right, in order to make flax usable, you have to take the flax plant and you have to soak it. So that's what we call flax water. So you really shouldn't go ahead and use mayim rum or flax water at all. Umei raglayim. So that's first statement. So statement number one is these items should not be used to cover the body because they're simply putrid. What about urine? So the Gemara says, Umei raglayim achito sochan mayim v'yikra. If there's urine, you could go ahead and, technically speaking, right, cover your body in the urine as long as you pour water into it. So the Gemara says, Tarabanan, kama yatil sochan mayim, kol shehu. How much water do you have to pour into it in order for almost to like negate the urine identity? Any amount of water. Rav Zakam or Ravius. Rav Zakai says Ravius. Aram machlokes lebasof. This is interesting. The machlokes is only about the amount of water you have to pour if you already have the urine there. However, again, about betchila kol shein. But I will say, if you, let's say, put regular water inside first, and then the urine comes in afterwards, the pre-existing presence of the urine ultimately, again, allows for that body of liquid to be used. Interesting. Rav Yosef on Rav Yosef says, machlokes lechatchila, aval lebasof divrei hakol revius. Rav Yosef says the machlokes is only lechatchila. In other words, how much water do you have to put in on the front end before the urine comes? But if you're introducing water after the urine is already there, everyone agrees that it's a revius. Amar Rav Yosef l'shamei. So Rav Yosef said to his attendant, I see li Rav Asa demaya kreb zakai. So apparently when Rav Yosef encountered this particular situation, he would say, bring me a revius of water like Rabbi Zakai. Okay. Tan Rabbanon. Graf shalrei va'avi shalmei raglayim. Asr likros kriyat shema kinegdas. Well, so now we're switching gears a little bit. So graf shalrei, we'll say, graf shalrei is like a bedpan. A bedpan with excrement inside of it. So you have a graf shalrei or a avi shalmei raglayim. Avi shalmei raglayim is a bedpan with urine inside of it. So what's the halacha? Asr likros kriyat shema kinegdan. You cannot recite shema opposite these items. Can't recite shema opposite. Va'afal pi she'ein bahem klum. Now, well, here's what's interesting. You can't recite shema opposite the bedpan itself, even if there's no waste inside of the bedpan. Now, a piece of important historical information about Talmudic bedpans. They were made from earthenware. So Rabbi say it's not metallic. It's made from earthenware. What's the chap with earthenware? Earthenware absorbs, right? It absorbs odor and it absorbs coloration. So the idea is, if you had a bedpan, it was fashmutz. It was so. Therefore, even if there's no waste in there, lemaisa, again, you still can't say kriyat shema opposite. Incredible. Umei raglayim atzman. What about urine itself? Does the presence of urine prevent you from going ahead and saying shema? So achiyatil sochan mayim. You have to mix water, and if you mix water into the urine, dilute the urine, that kind of takes away the urine identity, makes it into water. I guess it's also, remember, Chazal operating, what's the percentage of water in urine? 90%? A lot. All right? It's all water? Okay, so Right, but water. So let's say, so it is interesting. In other words, Chazal clearly understood this concept also. So that's why interesting, because like you look at this, why does the introduction of a little bit of water, of a little? I know who I'm asking. That's why I didn't turn to Chaim for this. And I was saying like mine's mainly Dr. Pepper. Way too much information, by the way. You need to save that kind of stuff when you give shir. That was. And by the way, you probably should see Dr. Feynman if that's the case, all right? So what's interesting is Chazal understood this, and that's why, again, simply introducing a little bit of water negates the urine identity, which is really very interesting. Okay, see, I only have to introduce a little bit of water. The kama yital solchan, how much water do you have to put in? Kol shu, any amount essentially obviates the identity of urine and makes it into water. Rabbi Zakkai says Revius, bein lefnei hamita, bein le'achar hamita. Now, boss, and here's what's interesting. Remember, so the way they're setting up this case is, remember, we're talking about a bedpan and presence of urine in a room. So the Pashas will say, again, in the days before indoor plumbing, so it made sense that a person had a bedpan in the bedroom, right? So in the middle of the night, you have to take care of your physical needs. The person's not going to go out to the outhouse, at least for urination purposes, right? So it's interesting over here. Zakkai says, you need a revius of water to negate the urine identity. And this is true whether the urine is in front of the bed or behind the bed. In other words, whether or not the urine is in direct, ocular range right in front of you or behind the bed, out of sight. Reb Shimon Gamliel says if the urine is behind the bed, then you're allowed to say Shema. If it's in front of the bed means that it's visible. If it's in front of the bed, so you can't say Shema. Aval marchiku arba amos v'korei. What you can do is distance yourself dalar amos. We'll say dalar amos is approximately 6 feet. Distance yourself 6 feet, and then you could recite Shema. Shimon Elazar Omer afilu beis mea ama. Afilu bayis mea ama. Lo yikra ad shiotziim o ad shianichin tachas hamita. So this is interesting. Shimon Elazar is the most machmer. Shimon Elazar says the truth is you just shouldn't daven. You shouldn't say Shema, and of course daven in the same house with waste. That's the idea. So even if the home is, it's a large home, still it should be removed from the house before you daven. Which I will say now, we don't pask in this way, but it is interesting just to see the entire spectrum of opinions. All right, Heichi Kamar. So Heichi Kamar, Achar Amita Kori Miyad, Lefnei Amita Marchik Arba Amos. Did he mean to say that if the urine is behind the bed, you could read Shema immediately, but in front of the bed, you have to distance yourself 4 amos v'korei, and then you could read Shema Udilma Hachi Kamar. If the urine is behind the bed, you have to distance yourself dalar amos, and then you can say Shema, right? Lifnei amita ena korei klal. But if it's in front of the bed, i.e., in direct proximity, you can't say Shema at all. Which one is it? So Tashma, the Sa'im Shimon Elazar Omer, Achar hamita korei miyad, lifnei amita marchik arba amos. If it's behind the bed, right? If it's behind the bed, you could say Shema. In other words, because we'll say if it's behind the bed, pretty much it's obscured. So because it's obscured, you can go ahead and say Shema. So right, I'm sorry. Right? Achar amita kor miyad, lifnei amita, if it's in front of the bed, i.e. in direct vision, right? Direct ocular range. So marchik arba amos. You distance yourself dalat amos from it, and then you can say Shema. Shimon Gamliel says, afilu bayis mea amo lo yikra ad shiyotziem o ad shianichin tachas hamita. Shimon Gamliel has the most machmir position. His position is you cannot say Shema in the same house where there is active present waste. I don't know if active is the right word. Present waste. You can't do that. It has to be removed from the home in order to be able to say Shema. So the Gemara says, the Gemara says, Bayon afshitalon masnisin kashna adadi. So in your effort to answer the question, now we have contradictory Mishnayos. To which the Gemara says, Eifuch bas raisa. So switch the opinions in the second one to align them with the first. My chaz is to afchis bas raisa, eifuch kamaisa. Why are you changing these opinions in the second raisa? Change them in the first one. Man shamas le da amar kule bayis ka'arba amos dami. Reb Shimon Elazar. Because Reb say again, interestingly enough, now this happens, is fascinating. Reb Shimon Elazar. Why does Reb Shimon Elazar hold that if there is waste in a home, you can't say Shema? I will say, just understand what that means. Right? A person lives in a large house. So there's waste on the upper story, and I'm davening Shema on the main floor. Shema says you can't do it. So we'll say, interestingly enough, that is a derivative of another position. Shimon Elazar holds that halacha l'maisa, the entire home is considered to be like dalet amas. In other words, your entire home is considered, we'll say dalet amas represents what? What does dalet amas represent? Your personal space. Right? That's your personal space, right? People say, like, you're invading my personal space. Dalet amas is my personal space. That's why, interestingly enough, your dalet amas actually have the ability to acquire something. For example, if we're going ahead, let's say we're talking, and I want to give you $100. I give you $100. So what do? But I don't want to hand it to you. Germs, COVID, whatever. So instead, what do I want to do? I throw it to you. And it lands like a foot away from you. Reuven standing on the side, he sees $100, right? So again, he jumps in and he grabs it. He's like, I found it, right? You didn't acquire it. It didn't come to your hand. The halacha is, Reuven has to give it to you. Why? Because once that money fell within your dalet amas, right? Your 6 feet radius, then that is considered to be like your domain. For acquisition purposes. So the concept of dalet amas means that your domain. So Shimon Elazar says it's actually really interesting that the entire home is like dalet amas. That's why he holds that if there's waste in the home, you can't say Shema there. Because waste in the home is effectively like what? Waste in your dalet amas. What's halacha if there's waste in your dalet amas? You can't say Shema. So I will tell you just very quickly, we actually rely on this halacha. We actually rely on this position in a very different kind of way. I will say the halacha really Shulchan Aruch brings down that when you wake up in the morning, you're supposed to wash your hands, negel vaser. And the idea really is that you're not supposed to really go more than dalet amas without washing your hands. Which is why many keep a bowl with water by their bed, underneath their bed, so that when you wake up in the morning, first thing, you could wash. But a lot of people don't do that. A lot of people don't do that. But I understand. But that's the halacha. You're not supposed to walk more than dalet amas. So the Mishnah Berurah says that we rely on the fact that what? Your home is like dalet amas. It's just pointing out. So many of us rely on this every single day without even realizing.
Let's go for like anything. Let's you walk without your yarmulke. Are you under a roof? Are you under?
No, because the din of dalet amas is not a din. In other words, walking without a yarmulke is even less than dalet amas. Not supposed to be without a yarmulke. Not din dalet amas. I don't know. You'd have to find other dalet amas halachas that you could apply it to. So the Mishnah Berurah seems to, it's a machlokes. There are definitely posting that hold that the lechatchila is keep the water by your bed. I would say definitely the Mishnah Berurah is relied on as a lechatchila. The person wants to be machmir, yeah, absolutely. But again, just pointing out, that has nothing to do with our Gemara, but it's an interesting application of this halachic process. Okay, or halachic concept. Let's go weiter. Says the Gemara. Amar Rav Yosef, boy minei Rav Huna. Mita pachos mishlosha pshitale diklava dami. So Rabbi says this is an interesting case over here. So let's analyze this a bit. So Rabbi says, let's say a person has waste and they want to put the waste under the bed. So the shaila is putting it under the bed. Consider that now it's covered. So the Gemara says, what does it depend on? It's actually really interesting. It depends on how much space there is under the bed. So Rabbi says there is a concept called lavud. What does lavud say? Lavud says that any space that is less than 3 tefachim. So we'll say, so a tefach, right? The tefach is what? About 3 inches. 3 inches. So let's just call it any space that's less than 9 inches, or we'll call it a foot even, right? Any space that's less than a foot is considered to be as if it's closed. We use this all the time, right? You're putting up your sukkah and your walls don't extend all the way down to the ground. There's a lot of things you can rely on for that. But on a most basic level, lavud. Right, as long as it's within a foot of the ground, you're good to go. So watch this. If the area underneath the bed is less than 3 tefachim, then it's considered to be closed. If it's considered to be closed, then what's the status of the waist underneath it? What's the status of the waist? Covered. Then it's covered. So the Gemara says, right? So kalavadami. So the Gemara says, pshitali de kalavadami. Shlosha, arba, chamisha, shisha, shiva, shmona, teishamau. So we'll say, so what happens if the space underneath the bed is more than 3 tefachim? Right? So what do you do then? Now, I can't rely on lavud. So now, the waist is underneath the bed. So what is the halacha? What is the halacha? So we'll say, if you take a look, by the way, fine. What's the halacha? Amrali, lo yedana. Says, I don't know. The truth is, what he was saying is, between 3 and 9, I don't know. Asara vade lo mibayli. Now, if the bed is 10 tfachim off the ground, so the space underneath the bed is more than 10 tfachim, then that's an easy one. I don't even have a question about that. Why? We'll say because remember, 10 tfachim of height is automatically another rishus. Right? Once something is 10 tfachim high, that becomes a separate domain. So because it becomes a separate domain, therefore the space underneath the bed can't be considered to be like a covering. So we'll say, here's what we know. If the area underneath the bed is less than 3 tfachim, then the waist is considered covered. If it's above 10 tfachim, it's considered uncovered. What happens if it's between 3 and 10? What's the halacha there? So Amalei Abaye, Shapir Avarata Deloi Bailacha, Kol Asar Rishus Achrisehi. Right, because 10 is a separate Rishus. Amar Rava. So Rava is like this. Hilchasa, what's the halacha? Pachus Mishlosha Kilavadami. So we'll say if the space underneath the bed is less than 3 tfachim, then I'll say that's the concept. That's called lavud. Lavud means attached. That is a halacha l'Moshe Misinas Sinaitic law given by Chaburah to Moshe Rabbeinu on Har Sinai. Right? So less than 3 tfachim, it's considered closed, the waist is covered. Asara Rishus Achrisei. If it's above 10 tfachim, to say something that is above 10 tfachim, then it's not considered covered. Mishlosha ad Asara. What about the space between 3 tfachim and 10 tfachim? Hainu deba'im mine Rav Yosef me Rahuna v'lo pashivle. So we'll say, that's the unresolved issue. That's the unresolved issue. So if you have waist, in other words, essentially if you have the bedpan underneath the bed, and the area underneath the bed is between 3 and 10 tfachim, that's going to be a shayla as to what that status is. Amar Rav, halacha Reb Shimon Elazar. Rav said that the halacha is like Reb Shimon Elazar. V'chein Amar Be'eli Amar Reb Yaakov Bara Debashmua halacha Reb Shimon Elazar. So we'll say, remember again, what did Reb Shimon Elazar say? Reb Shimon Elazar was the one who wanted to say that you can't daven with waist in the same home because the entire home is like Dalet Amos. So now they're saying halacha Reb Shimon Elazar. Rava Amar Ein halacha Reb Shimon Elazar. And Rava says that ultimately the halachas are not like Reb Shimon Elazar. So we'll say, so a machlokis. Now we know halacha l'maisa. We'll say the way we paskin is as long as you can't see the waist. Right? As long as I say it differently actually. That we saw from yesterday's daf. It's not really about not seeing it. What is it about? Covered. As long as it's covered and there's no odor, then ultimately, again, you're good to go for davening. So we don't really pass like this Reb Shimon Elazar as much as we use it for Natilas Yadayim. Everyone, to stop over for tonight. Shkoyach tomorrow. I just want to point out, this is not all of Maseches Berachos like this, right? In other words, we have one more day. Actually, I think we have one more day of Soa, Emir Hashem, and then Emir Hashem. Actually, hopefully Thursday night. My goal is to start the new parak. Emir Hashem tomorrow night. We'll finish up the sugi. Really great Gemara tomorrow. Then Thursday new parak. Shkoyach. I'm sorry. Oh.